Thank you to SimMotion for sponsoring this video, your US source for Moza, SimMagic, Husingfeld, and more. Use code DJ for 5% off your entire order. One of the most common questions I get is how do I choose a racing line for an oval track? It might just seem like everything is a circle. How do I know what's better than the other? So today I'm going to be breaking down the 5 most common types of oval lines that you will see, explain their use cases, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and any general tips that will carry over no matter what track you're at. We'll start with the lines that I use the most often and are the most versatile at different types of tracks and work our way down the list until we get to the most niche and weird lines that you can find in a NASCAR track. One thing to note is that this is all about the shape of the line. To me, it makes almost no difference where on the track this line is being applied. Maybe at the bottom, maybe all the way at the top, maybe in the middle. No matter what, the shape of the line dictates how you drive the corner, and you'll see what I mean right here in our first example. Starting with my most used line out of any of them, and I call it paint the line. But really, when we break it down, the shape of the line is just an early apex without any slide up, staying at the apex for an extended duration in the corner, and then only sliding up off the exit. I find that this line is best used at high bank tracks, which the majority of NASCAR tracks are. You'll see me doing this specifically a lot in intermediate tracks, 1.5 miles, quad ovals, and tri-ovals really. But you can even find this line that I use a lot of times at places like Bristol. Even though it's a short track, the banking is so high that this line becomes good for that as well. This line is also very good for track temperature and setup combos that make it so that you're not very stable on corner entry. Because one of the strengths of this line is minimizing the load on the right side tires on corner entry specifically. This opens up a couple things, the potential for less tire wear on corner entry because of the decreased loads, and then also the ability to get back on the throttle earlier, so if you are on a momentum heavy track, this line might also be good for this purpose as well. Another strength is that because the car's loads are lower in corner entry, you might find this line easier to drive than the others to achieve a similar level of speed. The weaknesses of this line is that it is almost never the optimal line in terms of single lap time. So in situations like qualifying or a short run, you don't really want to be trying out this line too much because you'll be losing time to people pushing the faster lines. Some tips for this line is that the goal is to get close enough to the absolute fastest possible lap time without adding extra load to your tires. So some things like turning in earlier or earlier on the brakes into corner entry will help you get back on the throttle earlier and allow for an aggressive exit. It is extremely important that you avoid any slide up in the center of the corner and to adjust your corner entries to accommodate for such if you find your car wanting to. The next line is actually the same as paint the line in my opinion, although it wouldn't look like it on first glance, and that is wall ripping. When you see drivers drive just inches from the wall all the way around the corner, that's actually pretty much the same line as when you're running the bottom. Because like I said before, it's not about the location of the car on the track, it's about the shape of the corner. So just like the first example, wall ripping, you want to get to your line early, you want to stay on the line without it sliding up, and you want to get back on the throttle early. That is pretty much the same fundamentals as paint the line. The biggest difference though is that you're going to have an automatic increase in tire wear because of the extra distance that you put your car under load in the corners. So you can drive the car perfectly balanced, perfectly fine, avoiding mismatched tire wear, but you will just automatically be wearing more because your car has a longer distance to drive. Wall ripping is best used at car, track, and condition combinations where you can't full throttle the bottom, but there's enough grip to full throttle the top. Sometimes this means that it happens better at progressively banked tracks like Homestead, but sometimes it means that you can have it work at a narrow track like Charlotte during qualifying. In general, though, the conditions that allow for wall ripping are about the same as the conditions that allow for paint the line. You just have to start experimenting between locations on the track where to apply this singular type of line. All right, the actual number 2 type of line on this list is the center apex. This is the line that most people think of when they think of a racing line. You enter the corner wide, you get to the apex around the center of the corner, and then you instantly wash back out to carry as much momentum as possible. This is the most intuitive racing line, but like I've said many times on the channel before, this is very poor on the tires the more banked of the track you get. The two big use cases of this line is for many tracks during qualifying and short run, and then for flat tracks, especially short tracks, this line can be good for the whole run. This is because speeds will be lower at these flat tracks, meaning loads will be lower on the tires, meaning that you can start to optimize your line so that you're going for pure speed. Be careful with this line even on the fairly banked short tracks though, because a lot of the times this will just heat up your tires more than the competition for very minimal overall lap time gain. Another weakness of this line is it could actually be harder to drive because you will be on the limit and the edge of your car for more of the corner, really all the way from corner entry until you can straighten out your wheel. Whereas with the paint the line, you can really get to the bottom and chill there for at least a third of the corner before putting any more edginess into the car. But my best tip for this corner center apex line is to attack the apex. You want to almost feel like you're driving through the apex, not just touch and going it. The more that you can be right down where you want to be in the center of the corner without the car giving out on you, the better your corner exit is going to be. In general, though, I rarely teach this line outside of those short tracks and for qualifying lines because it's just not worth the tire and extra load in your tires versus the time that you gain. It's usually really less than a tenth per lap between this and the paint the line in those higher bank tracks. For number 3 and beyond, we are getting into the more niche lines where I'm actually going to call out specific tracks because their use cases are only really tied to a few tracks throughout NASCAR. Number 3 is the one you're probably most familiar though, and it is the Diamond, probably most known for Dover. But really the Diamond is viable for any symmetrical oval that is bigger than your bullring short track. But really when you get to those shorter tracks, the flatter it is, the better the Diamond is going to work. So a place like IRP works a lot better for diamonds versus a place like Southern National, where I would actually just go back to paint the line similar like I would to Bristol. This diamond line is very good for setups that have a hard time rotating on corner entry, because what we do is we take the wheel out of the equation when we diamond, we have a straighter entry, and we use our brake to rotate at the top of the hill. Along with the straight entry, we also have a straight exit with the diamond line, which can be very good when the car has like no right rear tire left on it, really on any track. If you find yourself having no right rear grip, the diamond line might be your last resort line. And the reason that this works is because we get all the rotation in the center of the corner where the loads of the car are at its lowest because the car is going its slowest, and at the same time we can just do it all at once. For the higher bank track like Dover though, this is not really how you want to approach it. You want the car to always be rotating on the higher bank tracks, but just using the brake to help facilitate it so that we don't wear the right tire off the car. The main weakness to this line is that it just overslows the center of the corner way too much. It's never the fastest way to go around the track in a perfect condition. The only reason that we're doing this is because we have to, pretty much. Also, I find this line to be difficult because it is very easy to add that steering input and add additional loads into your tires while still not really feeling any benefit from it. You have to be very disciplined to run a good diamond line, using mostly the brake to rotate the car. So if you find yourself starting to diamond the car at most tri-ovals or quad-oval type tracks, just know that there is probably a better answer and that the diamond should probably only be the last resort. A little offshoot of the diamond that we can call 3B, I can really only think of an example at one track, and that is Darlington Turn 1 and 2. I call it the delayed diamond because we drive it in the shape of a diamond. We start low, straighten out the entry, go all the way to the top of the track, but we don't instantly turn down the track once we make it to the top. We delay the diamond. We stay along the top of the wall for a little bit, about a third of the corner, and then finally cut down at that last moment. The reason that we do this is because the track in that lane at Darlington is just so narrow that if the track was wider, we would diamond it out to a full diamond, but we're just not able to do that. So we cut the top of the diamond off, and I just call that a delayed diamond. If you guys can think of any other types of corners that are like that, like Darlington Turn 1 and 2, let me know in the comments. I couldn't think of any others. Oh, actually, now that I'm watching this back, I use this line a lot for when the wall ripping line is best for qualifying because you can gain a little bit of extra time and speed out of it versus just a regular wall ripping line. The next line is a line that you'll only see in a couple places on the NASCAR schedule, and that is the late apex line. This line is also very common in road racing, but the more banking that you add to the track, the worse it gets, which is why it's not very common in ovals. It's where you start wide, wait a little bit in the corner, and then try to straighten out the exit as much as physically possible to get a late cut down, late apex. You'll see me do this a ton in run-up laps for qualifying. It's how you get the most exit speed, period. So that is very useful there, but in terms of race running, I can only think of a couple places where it's used. The main uses for this line is for either when you're going so slow in the center of the corner that you can take the penalty of starting out way out wide and still get that really good exit. And then the other time that you do it is when you can't handle the car on the bottom of the track on entry. So in kind of opposite ways, the two tracks that I'm thinking of that like the late apex is New Hampshire, which is really, really good on the late apex, or Old Atlanta. What you do is you start up high, you let the car point down low, and you just drive straight off the exit. So very opposite tracks that like the late apex for almost opposite reasons. What they have in common though is that they are tracks where if you take the early or center apex line, you'll find yourself just bogged down because you won't be able to get back on the throttle. The reason in Atlanta, because your car would probably be too loose, and the reason at the New Hampshire track is because you would just have to wait for your car's angle to turn more. So that's kind of the thread that links them together. My biggest tip for running this line is to start it as if you were running the paint the line type line, but just a couple lanes up, and waiting on that brake or that off throttle, depending on the track, until your car points all the way down to the bottom. And if you carry the right amount of speed into the corner, it should just naturally point you in that late apex straight off the corner. The best place to practice that is at New Hampshire because it's pretty low speed and you can just work on the timing. You'll find that you just run a normal line about 2 or 3 lanes up, and then as you are dragging the brake, eventually a little bit longer than you think, it'll point all the way to the bottom and you can just drive straight off the corner super easy. So the strength of this line is corner exit speed, but the weakness is corner entry and center speed. So if you're at a track where every car is forced to have really bad corner entry and center speed, consider this line, but it won't pop up too much. And the final line on the list, which you will see a lot, but not as anyone's actual racing line, just as a racing technique, I guess I'd want to call, is the dive bomb line. This is the opposite of the late apex line. We want to apex early at the bottom and then let the car slide up and then wait on it to rotate from there. As you can probably imagine, it's never really the fastest line. You're just using it to get past another car. Because if we're prioritizing corner entry and corner center speed and we don't have good corner exit speed, then we're probably just going to get passed back. So the shorter the straightaways are on the track, the more that this could work. But the other very niche use case of this line is for a very hot, very wide track where you can't carry speed through the corner on center and exit because there's too low grip. So the one time that I can remember a dive bomb line being the best line is for the old Gen 4 car at Homestead. The first time we went out there, the best line was literally to dive bomb entry, let the car slide up, and then rip the wall from center on. So it was a very weird line, but it worked because the people trying to run the bottom line, the middle line, the top line just on its own weren't able to keep up their grip to a way that would allow them to make up the time difference from dive bombing the entry. So very niche, but it might come up in those low grip conditions where corner entry and corner center speed doesn't really amount to anything on corner exit. The biggest tip that I have here is almost the same as the diamond type lines, is don't add too much steering after you have your first apex. Just let the car under braking or under off throttle slide up, give what you need, but don't force it. If you're trying to get back on the throttle earlier, it's probably not worth it. You just have to let the car do what it wants to do, or else you're going to put a lot of extra load, especially onto your right front tire, or maybe your right rear tire just won't be able to handle it and you'll spin out. So those are all the main racing lines I use. Because racing lines as a whole are like a spectrum, you might find edge cases where you're going in between two different types of lines if you're trying to accomplish something specific, especially in a race. Let me know in the comments below which type of line is your favorite, or if there are any other types of lines that I didn't cover in this video. Alright, thank you all for watching. Hope you have a wonderful day. Hope to see you all on the track.